It's good to have you tonight here. This is our second presentation here at Brookbanks Public Library. We have Dr. Brown with us. She has
second here. And put that on a, I didn't bring a placemat. You know what a placemat? So I'm going to use this. Put your saran wrap down first, and then your paper or your cloth, and then you just drizzle a little bit of oil on there. And then you can take this to yourself or to whomever you're helping and just turn it right over, and you've got your poultice already made. You don't have to. So what is castor oil good for? It's an excellent pain reliever. It's awesome to relieve pelvic pain, colon pain, liver pain, and muscle pain. My husband had hepatitis last fall after a trip to Great Britain, and he wasn't real sick with it, but his liver hurt. And we put castor oil on there, and he said, "Man, this really helps. I don't have any pain anymore." It also, it felt so good. It also will help with constipation. If you have hardened fecal material in the colon, it will help to soften that so it can be moved eventually. It will help to soften tumors. If you have fibroid tumors or cancer tumors in the pelvis, somehow it penetrates in there and it helps to soften those tumors so the body can break them down and get rid of them. So it's just an amazing thing, and a bottle like this will last a very long time because you can reuse this if you're using it for pain. If you're using it with an infection or with cancer, I would throw it away or wash the rags after each treatment. But for pain, you can reuse it. So I put it in a Ziploc bag, zip it up, and use it again the next time for about 6 weeks. So, okay. I have tofu here. Did you ever think you could use tofu for anything medicinal? Tofu is really good for migraine headache. It doesn't matter what brand or firmness you use, but you can take a block of tofu like this and you crumble it up, and then you put a 1 1/4 teaspoon of wheat flour with it and mix it really well, and then you apply it right here to the back of the head as a poultice. So you would put it between 2 pieces of paper towel, like right here, and then put this over the top of it, and then just apply it right here to the back of the head. And that will relieve the inflammation and the pressure. I've used it for brain tumors, I've used it for migraine headaches, I've used it for sometimes you just feel like your neck muscles are swollen, and it will help that as well. It's a little more expensive than cabbage, but hey, use what you have. Tablespoons, 1 1/4 tablespoons of wheat flour. Yeah. The whole wheat flour is probably better than the white. But anyway, that's what you can do with tofu. And when you mix it up like that, you wouldn't use the whole thing for one treatment, but you have enough for 3 or 4 times. You just use about maybe 1/4 cup at a time. Okay. Peppermint tea. I don't have peppermint here, but you know what peppermint is. You can use either fresh or dried peppermint leaves and make a tea. You would use about a teaspoon, maybe 2 teaspoons of the loose leaf in a cup or 2 cups of water. Bring it to a boil and then let it simmer for a few minutes. And that's really good. It helps to settle this upset stomach, for nausea or upset stomach. It's really good for calming. It's good for irritability. So there's a lot of things peppermint is good for. Peppermint. Some of these in the back in the books. If we can look at them. The pictures are not there. No. The peppermint tea. No, I don't think so. 3 2-liter bottles of white grape juice with the least amount of preservatives or chemicals in it. No sugar, unsweetened. And then you need 2 2-liter jars of water, the juice of 4 lemons, and the ginger. If you have a good sturdy juicer, you can peel it and juice the ginger. If you don't, then you have to make ginger tea, and that takes longer. I'm laughing because one time we needed to have this as a demonstration, and we brought some juice with us that we'd made at home, but it wasn't enough. And so at midnight we were still up grating ginger and making tea in this little tiny motel room with a little 1-burner stove. But it can be done, you know. So anyway, the ginger juice, and then you add a bag of ice cubes. And it's best if you can let it sit overnight and the flavors blend really well. And it's very refreshing, and there's no sugar in it. And we talked about the onion poultice, the garlic oil, the frozen banana, potato, cabbage. On the back of the first page, there's an iron drink. Some people have problem with anemia or low red blood count, and this is excellent. I've used it with people that were having blood transfusions because they kept losing blood and their blood count was so low, and it slowed that down, and they didn't have to have the transfusions as often. As well as people that just have regular anemia, and it helped to strengthen. So then the next recipe here is the vegetarian penicillin, and I'm going to show you tonight how to make the one that I've written by hand out to the side. So we just need to have this blender. And I've already cut up a grapefruit about this big, and you use the rinds, and so we've washed them. And you just put the whole fruit in there. And we need an orange. And you're going to get to taste this. This is really good for, can I get you to peel this one? Peel this garlic for me. Here's a lemon. And while Roger's peeling that, I'm going to put just a little bit of water in here to run the blender because these are really juicy. And we'll just have to bear with the noise for a minute. All of those fruits are high in vitamin C. And then we're going to add an onion. And I know this sounds really strange, but you know what? And we're not talking about food combinations right now. And then we're also going to add some garlic. The recipe calls for a whole bulb of garlic, but for our purposes tonight, I'm only using 3 cloves. The garlic has enough antibacterial properties that this will keep in the refrigerator for months if you don't use it. And so what we do is we blend it all up, and then I put it in a jar and keep it in the refrigerator. And then when you feel like you're coming down with something, or in the wintertime when you know you're exposed to a lot of things, then you just take a spoonful every day. We had some friends come to visit us, and they weren't feeling well, and they felt like they were catching colds, so I had some made up, and I gave them a little bit, and they liked it so well they ate a whole cupful. And then they took the recipe home, and they make their recipe, and they keep it in the fridge, and they use it for a spread on their toast every morning. Every morning. And they haven't been sick since. There are many variations to this recipe. You can look it up online, Russian penicillin or vegetarian penicillin. but I like this one with the raw fruits and vegetables best. And the point is that it helps to boost your immune system, and it helps to fight whatever you're exposed to and feeling sick from. Pesticides. If you can find organic is best, but we couldn't, and we washed the skins really well. So we scrubbed them and used a pesticide remover. Okay, that's a good question. Thank you. So we're going to pass this around, and you can taste it. I know there's at least one person here in the room, and there's probably others that are watching that have children and might have some questions about how do we know when it's important to be concerned about the symptoms that we see. So I'm going to talk about children's illnesses here just for a moment. The common things that we have problems with our children are ear infections. We've already talked about that a little bit. Fever, nausea and diarrhea, teething, infections, and dehydration. Ear infections, sometimes the baby's fussy and they can't tell you what's wrong, but maybe they're pulling at their ear. That's a classic symptom. Or they're running just a slight fever, but they don't seem to be sick anywhere else. Remember that fever is a friend. And it's a symptom that there's something wrong and we need to pay attention to it. But please don't give your children Tylenol to take their fever away. Most of us have been taught by articles we've read, by other parents, by scary stories that we hear, that we shouldn't let the fever get too high. Well, what does too high mean? And I'm sorry, I'm not used to Celsius, so I'm going to tell you in Fahrenheit, and maybe you can translate it, but 104 fever is about 40 degrees Celsius, is kind of up there and pretty high, but it's very easy to bring it down. 103, 104. Usually when the fever gets up about 100 and 101, the child is kind of tired, they want to sleep a lot, they don't feel good, they're cranky, you can't comfort them, and as the fever goes up to 102, 103, they become what we call listless. All they want to do is just lay there, and their face is flushed, and they're just really uncomfortable. You can, at that point, you can sponge them with a cool water, and that will help bring the fever down. Another way is to give a little tepid enema. That means the water is cool. It's not real warm and it's not cold, but it's just cooler than body temperature. When my son was 18 months old, he had a little fever, and I couldn't get it down. It wasn't real high, but it was enough to make him feel bad. And so I wasn't sure that he would understand me, because he wasn't toilet trained yet. But I explained to him, and I gave him just a little bit of water in his rectum, and he was able to sit on the toilet and hold it and then let go of it, and it brought his fever right down. It was so amazing. But another thing that you can do, the children won't like this, but you put them in a tub of water that's warm, and you increase the heat of the water, and first you check their temperature before you put them in the tub, and then you continue to check the temperature until it's 1 degree above where you started. So for instance, if your child's temperature is 102 degrees Fahrenheit, then you keep adding warm water. You don't want it hot, because we're not trying to burn the child, but you want to increase the temperature of the water so the temperature goes up to 103. As soon as you hit 103, then you have a pitcher of cold water, ice cold water, and you pour it, you stand them up and you pour it down the back of their neck, and it will break the fever just like that. They'll scream and holler, but as soon as the fever comes down, then they're fine and they feel better and they start laughing. It's so fun. It is so fun to know that you're helping your child feel better, and you just have to know that they're going to scream because nobody likes cold water poured on the back. The reason you pour it on the back of the neck is because that's where the temperature regulating mechanism is in the brain.
He's not going to collapse, right?
No, he will not collapse.
Only this portion, not the body.
No, just, well, it'll go down the body, but you pour it right here on the back of the neck because that's where the temperature is regulated in the brain, right there at the base of the brain.
Tell them about that time that was paralyzed.
A copy of Dr. John Harvey Kellogg's an original copy of Dr. John Harvey Kellogg's hydrotherapy. And we had a friend who had a creeping paralysis. It started with his feet, and he was paralyzed. And everybody in the church was praying for him because if it hits his diaphragm and that's paralyzed, he would die. So the paralysis stopped just before that, and then it started to go away. But it went away, and he was able to walk. But the only thing was the nerves to his bladder were still affected, and he couldn't go to the bathroom. And so they called me and they said, what can we do? So I went to that was something that's not common, and I had to look it up, you know. And so I went to that book on hydrotherapy, which means water treatments. And I learned that if you do hot and cold sitz bath, so you do hot for 3 minutes and ice cold, and you just sit in it so this part of the body is covered. And they called me afterwards. They were so thrilled because it helped restore that nerve action to the bladder. And they were so relieved by it. They were laughing and having so much fun during this treatment, even though it was not comfortable to sit in ice water. It wasn't just hot and cold. It had to be ice water to stimulate those nerves. So Saturday afternoon at the church, another location which we can give you the address if you're interested, I'll be giving a whole lecture on what we can do with water to be well or to regain our health. And I need to remember to include that one in that lecture. So we already talked about what to do about teething and nausea. Okay, if your child has a fever, let's talk about that a little bit more. If the fever is lasting more than 3 days, or it's more than 104 degrees. 104 degrees is a high fever, but it's not going to put your child into convulsions, usually. 105, 106 maybe, but even that high, if it's controlled and you catch it and take care of it quickly, it's still not going to be too dangerous. If the child is listless and nothing you do helps it to get its energy back, then you need to see the doctor. If he has severe injuries, if he broke an arm, or if he has a bloody nose that won't stop, or a head injury, you need to take him to see the doctor. Some things we need the doctor for, but there's a lot of things that we can do at home, and that's what I'm trying to teach you tonight. There's things we can do with what we have in our kitchens that will help us, and we don't have to pay the money. You guys have some kind of free health care, but we have to pay money to go to the emergency room and sit there for hours for them to do something simple or tell us they can't help us.
The same here. We can
Yeah.
stay long time.
Yeah. If you have severe bleeding, or if they're vomiting blood, or if they're bleeding from the ear or the rectum, those are things that you need to go to the emergency room and see the doctor about. You don't wait and see if it's going to get better. If a child or a person in your home stops breathing or they're choking, you do what you can to help them, but you immediately need to get them to the doctor. There's a symptom called retraction, and I'm going to try to explain that to you, especially in young babies, 2, 3, 4 months old. Normally when a baby breathes, they breathe from the diaphragm, and it goes up and down nicely. But when they have this virus, it causes what we call retraction, and it goes in and up, out, in and up and out. And it's an unusual kind of breathing, but the mother may not recognize that. We were visiting some friends of ours when their baby was 3 months old. And I noticed, and the baby wasn't feeling well, and I noticed that she was having that kind of breathing. And I said to the mother, as calmly as I could, we need to take that baby to the doctor. She's sicker than you think she is. And when we got to the doctor and everything was examined and they had to put her in an oxygen tent and she was in the hospital for a week or so, it's nothing about me, but if I hadn't been there and recognized that, the baby may not have lived because it would have gotten worse and she could have died. And so they were really thankful to the Lord that we saw that, recognized that, and were able to get some help. So, and it's not an uncommon illness. It's a little viral illness that they get, but that uneven or unusual breathing is the main symptom of it. So at this time, I'd like to take questions, if you have any questions. That's all I have for tonight. Syrup, there's some controversy about that one. There's natural cane crystals that's not as processed as white granulated sugar. The sweet fruits blended, I like to take pears and put it with cashews and blend it, and it makes a nice cream, and it's sweet to put on cereal or waffles, or you can use coconut milk. That's usually sweet, tastes sweet. You have a question? Brown sugar, that's a good question, but brown sugar is white granulated sugar that they've added a little molasses back into, so it's not the best. But you can find granulated cane crystals that are not as processed. What we talked about last night is that the white granulated sugar is a chemical. It doesn't have any resemblance to the beet or the sugar cane that it started out with. So if you get something that's not as processed, and that's what honey or molasses or the cane crystals would be better for you than the brown sugar. Okay? There's also stevia. There's books that teach you how to use stevia in your recipes. It's 300 times sweeter than sugar. So you just use a very small amount. And you have to learn to work with it because if you use too much, it's bitter instead of sweet. Stevia, S-T-E-V-I-A. It's a plant. And that's also in the books back there. You can look it up. So does that answer your question? Okay. Could we combine dried fruits with fresh fruits? Yes. Could I eat dried fruits after the meal like a dessert if it's not a vegetable meal? You don't want to combine your fruits and vegetables at the same meal because the fruits digest quickly and the vegetables take longer, and the stomach will not release the contents of the stomach until everything is to the same point of digestion. So if you eat fruits and vegetables at the same time, the fruits are ready to go, but the vegetables aren't, then you have what we call fermentation, and that creates alcohol and gas and bloating and discomfort and inflammation. So it's better to eat fruits by itself, but if you're eating a fruit meal, you could eat dried fruits at the end of that meal, and it would feel like a dessert. And you can put fruits and grains together. That's not the best combination, but it's okay. When could watermelon be eaten? Melons are best, when you're talking about food combining, melons are best eaten by themselves with nothing else. So you could make a whole meal out of a watermelon. And did you know that you can take the rind, the green part, cut the outside green part off and juice the rest of it? It's excellent remedy for taking the excess water out, and you get the minerals. And we just had a watermelon this week, and we got 3 liters of juice just out of the white and greenish part after you eat the red part. So there's a lot of nutrition and juice that you're throwing away when you throw those rinds away.
One watermelon is 2 of those.
Say it again.
2 of those picture foods.
2 liters.
That's a
It filled up 3 liters, I think. So those are good questions. If you eat something with your melon, it will slow down the digestion of the fruit. But if you choose to eat something with it, have crackers or toast or something else. Or you could eat another type of melon. You could do a fruit salad with cantaloupe and the honeydew green melon and the watermelon. Make a nice salad with that. So they're all melons. Or we had watermelon and papaya for lunch today. That was a nice combination. The concept of combining fruits and vegetables, there's 3 exceptions to that rule. Papaya and pineapple have digestive enzymes, so they will go with either fruits or vegetables. The avocado is a neutral item. It can be either a fruit or a vegetable because it has more fat in it. So those are the only exceptions that I know of to the combination rule of fruits and vegetables. Okay, are there any other questions? Thank you very much. You come and have.
I know charcoal is not found in
I
the...
can go ahead and talk about charcoal. Did you have a specific question?
No, if you could tell us something.
At my lecture on Saturday afternoon, I'm going to give a handout that has the directions how to make a charcoal poultice. But because you asked the question, for now, I will tell you that charcoal, powdered charcoal, in British Columbia is not available. I don't know whether it is here or not.
Yes.
I know you can get the tablets. Can you buy the powder?
No.
Okay, well, they can't sell it over there, so I don't know why. Anyway, you can, the charcoal, powdered charcoal or the tablets, either one, are a powerful adsorber. An absorbent is something like a sponge. It soaks up the water. It absorbs the water. But adsorb is, I like to compare to a magnet. It pulls things to it and hangs on to it. So charcoal has the ability to pull poisons and toxins and waste and inflammation through the circulatory system into the gut and then hang on to it and move it on through the system. So again, a poultice, I don't have that handout with me, but you take 3 tablespoons of ground flaxseed and 1 cup of water, and you cook that until the flaxseed is thick. And then you take it off the stove and add 3 tablespoons of powdered charcoal. And you have to do that carefully because the powder it's really fine dust and it will go everywhere if you're not careful. So you stir all that up, and then you lay your saran wrap, and I like to use paper towel, depending on the area that you're covering, but lay that, it's kind of like a pudding now. You have a charcoal pudding. You lay that down on your piece of paper towel, put the top over it, and then lay it over the area that you're treating. I had a friend who couldn't go to the doctor, and her child was quite ill. He was very allergic to some foods, and she had given him something that he wanted and caused him to have a lot of pain, and he was curled up in a fetal position with that pain. Couldn't seem to find anything to relieve it. So she called me, and I said, well, bring him over and I'll help him. So we made a charcoal poultice, and we put it on his little tummy, and within 5 minutes, the pain was gone, and he was relaxed and asleep. That's how amazing it is. It works well for the inflammation. It works well for pain, which I just described. We can drink it, and in the emergency room, they use it for people who come in with drug overdose. They put a tube in their stomach, and they pour cups full of charcoal down there to get that drug out of their system. Roger worked in the mill where they made paper, and he was around a lot of really toxic chemicals for years. And he had all these canker sores in his mouth, and we were trying to figure out how to help him so he didn't get the canker sores all the time. Well, he told you the other day that at another class that he found if he stopped eating so much bread that helped. But at that time we didn't have that clue, and we were using charcoal. And he drank a tablespoonful of charcoal in a glass of warm water every day, and it helped keep those poisons moving out of his body instead of staying there and making him sick. He did that, yeah, he did that for a whole year.
Could be efficient also in gum problems?
Can it be useful for gum problems, like if you have inflamed gums? We learned about powdered charcoal when our daughter was 8 years old. You know how kids are, they like to try new things. She loved to brush her teeth with charcoal because it takes the tartar off. It's just real slightly gritty, you know, it just has a little coarseness to it. And it also helps with the inflammation because it helps to pull the bacteria and the poison the bacteria are leaving in your gums. And then she would come out like this with her black teeth. She just had a lot of fun with that. So that was a long time ago.
Excuse me, I have a question. What about bruises? Do you have some remedy for bruises? My son all the time has bruises, and I feel so.
All right, the question is, what about bruising? Is your son active in bumping himself? Okay, so she has a little 12-year-old son that's bumping and running into things and falling down and playing and getting bruised. Well, the potato or the carrot or the cabbage will help with, especially the potato will help with the bruising. It pulls that, you know, when you bruise, when you hit something, it breaks the blood vessel and the blood spreads out under your skin, and that's what looks like a bruise. We call a bruise. And because it's bleeding under the skin, it's swelling and it causes pain because there's really not room in there for it to go. So the potato reduces that swelling and absorbs well, I don't think it absorbs the blood, but it absorbs the other fluids in there so that it doesn't turn black and blue and it doesn't swell if you catch it immediately. If it's hours old, it may still be helpful, but it may not take it completely away. Tell him to just be more careful. Pick his feet up. Okay, another question that takes people into his home to help them with their health problems. And he had a lady one time that had ovarian cancer or some kind of cancer in her pelvis. And the charcoal is really good for that kind of pain and swelling and discomfort that comes with that, to help relieve those symptoms. And then he was really curious, and so he took the poultice after he'd applied it for a few hours. He took that and he sent it to a lab because he was just curious, what was it pulling out? And the lab report came back, there was actually cancer cells. So I'm not saying that it cures cancer. I don't want you to misunderstand me, but it will help to relieve those symptoms and take out some of that poison. And
Every time you use like for a couple of hours?
at least 1 hour. 2 hours is fine. I usually put it on at bedtime and leave it on overnight. Yeah. Yeah. So I think if there's no more questions, we completed our... Go ahead if you have another question. Yeah. So I'll talk to you.